Good, thanks, Bede. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, what I wanted to, we're going to, in one sense, not interrupt it exactly, but we're going to talk about what Vedanta is not. And in order to do this, we're going to talk about other things that that Vedanta, I suppose, sheds light on, but isn't Vedanta. And we're going to look at this mainly from a Western point of view. Okay?
Yep.
Because, as you know, I think that Swami Dayananda was extraordinary, but I want to just give a context to show what that extraordinariness is, and to show that how it's different from what we've normally come across. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, in the history of Western thinking, we have had this, in one sense, a battle between two different things. On one hand, on the right-hand side, we have theology. Now, theology is religious belief. It is conceptions, mental conceptions or belief about what God is, about what man is, and how man should be living.
Yeah.
And our history in the West, for example, has theological beliefs or theological or religion, mainly the Christian religion, based on theological concepts. And I note them saying concepts, right? There has been a tremendous amount of killing and violence and all of that sort of stuff in the name of theology, because if you do not obey, if you do not agree with the beliefs, it was considered that you weren't worthy of life in many ways. In fact, I think it was about the 17th century or the 16th century, about 50% of the population of Europe destroyed each other over religion. So we have, but the main thing is that theology are ideas about or beliefs about what God is, what the human being is and what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of theology, we have science, the development of science, an absolutely magnificent thing, as we know. Okay, we couldn't be talking now without the discoveries of science. And science is a methodology to find out the quantitative aspects of living, how much, what you can measure, what you can see and measure.
Yeah.
Okay. And out of science, so you've got science, which is a methodology, which is to bring about more scientific knowledge so that we can gain more and more control over the physical universe. Out of this also comes a philosophy called Scientism. And the philosophy of Scientism says that everything can be explained in terms of quantitative measure. You know what I mean? So you, for example, what you are is, your being is made up of matter. It's so high, we can look at the physical composition of this matter. Do you know what I mean? We can study a thing called chemistry. We can look at you under the aspect of biology. We can look at you as a living life form. Or we can look at you as really just simply motion and energy and all of that stuff, which is physics. So we have these two extremes, don't we? We've got religion, which is based on religious belief. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we have science, which completely and utterly rejects religious belief. But it's not science that rejects religious belief as such. It's scientism, which is an opposing belief, because scientism is a belief. It says that all we're looking at is physical matter. Do you know what I mean? And anybody who talks about anything other than physical matter they're a little bit cuckoo. So it's one belief against another belief. And then you have the scientific methodology, which is, I find, extremely interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The methodology is extremely good. Scientism, I have disagreed with, for example.
Yeah.
So we're clear so far?
Yeah.
So in our Western tradition, we have religion on one side, and we've got science on the other side. Science as methodology, which does not counter religious beliefs as such.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got scientism, which does counter religious beliefs.
So some people mightn't recognize, like, scientism as an expression isn't probably recognized in the West, but it's probably something which guides the sort of common, a common form of thinking in the West.
Yes, it's what I'm but what I just want to say is it is a belief system.
Yeah.
It's a belief as to what the nature of reality is.
Yeah.
Now we had an extraordinary thing happen in Greece about 500 years BC, right? Mm-hmm. We had the development of philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what this was a very interesting thing. This dealt with issues that can never be answered by science, and it's never answered by religion or theology.
Mm-hmm.
Because what it was the free inquiry using human reason alone. And this would go into questions of what's real? Is everything just simply matter? What is real? Is it spiritual? So what they did was this free, unaided use of reason to try and discover, right, or to come to understand the issue of, say, what is reality, for example. Now, one of these, and this subject matter of what is reality was called ontology.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
so ontology is just simply an endeavor to discover what is reality, what is being, what does it mean to be. And some philosophers said, well, to be means to be completely material. Okay. Mm-hmm. Some philosophers, people who, great thinkers, said, no, man's nature is spiritual. And so but the most important part about it was that there was a complete freedom to examine reality with the use of our reason alone. Mm-hmm. of issues that theology never dealt with, in the sense that theology never would deal with it in terms of free intellectual inquiry. It punished because theology will always punish what people don't, if it clashes with it. Yeah. Okay. It used to traditionally. Okay. Now that the church hasn't got any power, they're a lot more nicer. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, then you'd have questions of what you would call epistemology. They'd ask the question, how, like, we can talk and we go, well, how do we know what's really happening in the world? How valid is our knowledge of the world, especially if we're listening to propaganda from TV stations that are backed up by corporations? So this is what they call epistemology. It's the inquiry into, but with the use of reason. Yeah. What does it mean to know? You know what I mean? And how valid is our knowing? And can we know more than the senses are telling us? These are issues, for example, that as normal people we deal with, don't we? Mm-hmm. What's real? Am I seeing the truth? Am I knowing it? So that whole study of whether I'm seeing the truth, or is my mind conforming to what is really here, that's the subject matter of epistemology. Mm-hmm. And then we have the very important subject of what does it mean to behave rightly with other human beings, which is ethics. Yeah. What's right, what's wrong. And the father of ethics in Western thinking, and father was Socrates. Socrates was interested in how do we see rightly? And he believed that unless we think in the right way, we can't act in the right way. And he considered that the ultimate end of the human being was to discover what was truly good, the summa bonum, the supreme good of, and he considered the whole purpose of life was to discover the good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
But again, he was using reason.
Mm.
Okay? And then you have the subject matter of cosmology, which is, what is the world? What is it made up of? You know what I mean? So we have, at the moment, we have physicists who deal with this issue now, don't they? What is this universe and all of that stuff? So that's cosmology, which is an important area. Now, also we have, through the use of reason, we have spiritual philosophy, don't we? Mm. What is the nature of man? Well, the nature of man's a spiritual. We're a spiritual being, or we're consciousness, or there's various ideas about what we are. Again, using reason,
mm-hmm.
and we come to conclusions, which are mental conceptions about life.
Mm-hmm. Okay?
So now, the big question is, when we're looking at Vedanta, are we, was Swami Dayananda talking Hindu theology? Absolutely not. He never discussed Hinduism with them. Was he discussing, was he a scientist? No. He didn't do experiments. Do you know what I mean? So here we've got theology on one side, we've got science on the other, we have philosophy. Do you know what I mean? Various philosophies using our reason, mm-hmm. our knowing faculties that we have in order to arrive at what is. Now, I have a great love of Western philosophy, actually. Mm-hmm. However, Vedanta, as unfolded by Swami Dayananda, is not a theology, it's not science, and it's not philosophy. However, so
this is interesting. So it doesn't fit into any of them.
None of our Western categories, no.
Mm.
Now, this is extraordinary. I found this extraordinary. Now, when I first met my teacher, Atmaprakashananda, she said, Vedanta isn't a philosophy, it's a vision. And I went, it's a vision. Because I'd always, wanted it, so this is what I want to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
The vision now, and I says, so I said so basically out of the Hindu culture came this vision, and she says, oh no, Bede. Out of the vision came the culture, the Hindu culture.
Mm.
And so what we were talking about here was something entirely different. Mm. And so we have these different ways of knowing, don't we? We've got the ways of knowing, which you could call theology, which I doubt whether you call that a way of knowing, but it's a belief system. You've got science, which brings about certain knowledges or understandings of life, and you have philosophical knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But what Swami Dayananda brought to the West in a way was a way of knowing which can make you come alive to what is without the use of theology, philosophy, or science.
Mm.
But the difference is that the way of knowing that he brought is that so that when you come to see, they see the big three philosophical areas of life are what is God, what is the world, and what is ourself.
Mm.
Swami Dayananda brought a way of a method where you could come to know the truth of what is God, the truth of what is God, the truth of the world, and the truth of ourselves, without the use of philosophy, theology, or science.
Which, all those three are really belief systems, aren't they, that come from it? Like the methodology of science isn't a belief system, but the meanings, if you think everything's the physical world, well, there's certain belief or that's...
what they produce are mental conceptions concerning what reality is. Now Vedanta is not that.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to explain to you now. You see, in the West, or in theology, we had a thing called hermeneutics. A really complicated word, but what it meant was that you've got these religious texts, and then you're going to try and work out, well, what do they mean? Yeah. What do these texts mean? So, what would happen? This might help to explain a word. In English, we have a word called we've got a word called implicit and explicit, haven't we? Okay. Now, implicit means it's folded in.
Yeah.
So implicit means it's there, but it's folded in. So there's a meaning in the scripture that's there. And what we want to do is we want to make it explicit.
Yeah.
So we can clearly see the meaning. This was the effort. Okay. It was called hermeneutics. And it was a method to try and discover the meanings that exist within the texts.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we have there is a Hindu religious text called the Bhagavad Gita, and this text is the story or the record of a dialogue, a conversation between the Lord Krishna, who is seen as God in human form, and a soldier by the name of Arjuna in the battlefield. Now, what's interesting about this is that and embedded in this scripture, there are meanings, but they're not meanings in the scripture. They are meanings. They're a way of seeing ourself, our life, and God that can come alive in us as we are here, right now, as we are as a human being. So Swami Dayananda did not unfold the meaning of a Hindu scripture. He used the scripture to unfold meanings that exist in our life, that we could come to recognize and see.
Do you have an example of that, or?
Okay. Yep. For example, when I first met my teacher, she said to me that people and things don't hurt you. They're only instrumental in revealing a pain or a hurt that already exists. Now, we've talked about this in our talks. That is a fact to be recognized and appreciated, isn't it?
Yes.
And you see, and the thing is that when you truly recognize that fact, it has an effect on your life. You stop blaming. So when you really, you see the way Swami Dayananda used words was he took the meanings that exist within the scripture of the Bhagavad Gita. He then unfolded those meanings, but the meanings were not meanings in the scripture. He unfolded the meanings are meanings that exist in our life that we can become aware of. So he brought a way of knowing using the meanings in the Hindu scripture so that we could see our life in a clear and undistorted way. And because we come into contact with what actually is, it's a means of knowledge. And it's not, you see, if my wife gets upset with, if I get upset with my wife and I'm angry, and then suddenly I realize, oh, wait a minute, she's not hurting me. All she's done is she's instrumental in revealing a pain that already exists. Suddenly I stop blaming. If I in fact see that.
Yeah.
Now this is the other point. What Swami Dayananda did was he unfolded a way of seeing life that when you actually recognize and appreciate life in this way, you are freed from psychological suffering. Now, this is where it's different. I might know, and I do know, quite a lot about ontology. I was very interested in ontology, the theory of being, the philosophy of being, when I was younger.
Yes.
But me knowing philosophy, having a philosophy in my mind, didn't change me as a person. It didn't transform the way I see my life, transform my emotions. It didn't transform the quality of my experience. It was just something I had in my head. Whereas
as a conceptual framework.
Yeah. So I had this conceptual framework, but which I believe to be true to a certain point.
Yeah.
But actually coming alive to facts as they are, this is what Swami Dayananda would say is really, this is seeing what is. So he would use words to unfold a meaning that exists in our life that we could come to recognize and appreciate. And he dealt with the three areas. What is God? What is the world? And what is ourself? But he didn't deal with it philosophically, scientifically, or theologically. So when we're dealing with Vedanta, we're not studying a subject called Vedanta. We're not studying the Bhagavad Gita as such, as a religious text. We're seeing our life in the light of the meanings that are embedded in that text, that are being unfolded by a living teacher, so that we can become acquainted with our life as it is. And this is what they mean by Vedanta is a means of knowledge. It's a way of seeing.
Which isn't a belief system, as you're saying, isn't it?
Absolutely not. What interested me about Swami Dayananda was he said that we can come, that God is a fact that can be that we can come alive to. We can appreciate God as a fact.
So you're saying, in this case, God's not a belief. It's a fact. No. God is a fact to be appreciated.
What he's talking about is that that God is a fact to be appreciated. Now this is something in the West, we don't have anything like this.
No.
So but what's more important, when we come to a recognition of what God is, and then we can abide in that recognition while living, to understand what God is to be changed as an individual. You see, the whole point about Vedanta, what makes it relevant, is it through knowledge, human suffering is resolved. So through knowledge, not through doing, not through philosophy, not through practice. Through knowledge, human suffering is resolved. And it's an understanding of life that does not depend upon our believing other people. We don't have to, there's no external authority that we have to believe. So it's got two things: the resolution of human suffering.
Yeah.
And this resolution does not depend upon our believing in what people are saying that life is, or what God is, or how you should live, or any of that.
So you're saying it didn't depend on you believing what Swami Dayananda was teaching. It wasn't the point. He was revealing a way of seeing or understanding what God is, what the world is, what I am, what you are.
Yeah, what would happen would be you'd be there listening with a listening mind, and then you would start to see as he saw. And in that very seeing, what you were seeing was entirely different than what you've been seeing. But it wasn't, he was not giving me a belief about life. And you see, and then you have another subject matter in Western intellectual thought, psychology. And there's various theories about psychology, about what the human being is and why they're sad and how we can fix them and all of this sort of stuff. He never unfolded a theory about psychology. Rather, he showed us what our psychology is. You see, it's a very hard thing to explain what Swami Dayananda means by a means of knowledge, because as soon as we think of a means of knowledge, for example, some people think that Vedanta is a belief about the spiritual nature of man, that man is consciousness and that man is, he's not a material body, he's simply awareness. Now, I can have that as a conception, a philosophical, spiritual conception.
Yeah.
But for me to appreciate my very self as awareness and abide in that appreciation while living is entirely different from having a philosophical conception.
Yes.
I can have a philosophical conception of being free of pain and insecurity and self-dissatisfaction. I can have that, can't I, as an idea? Oh, that'd be nice.
Yes.
But to actually appreciate myself in a way in which there is no insecurity and no self-dissatisfaction is entirely different.
So how do you, people, it would seem that it'd be, I guess we would have to go in, and I don't know if it's the right point at this time to go into what do you mean by not having, people say I'm the self and suddenly, and they have a certain conception of what that means, so they're free of all suffering, but they're actually just an idea. You're talking about something quite different here.
Yes, I am, and I want to. It's a good point to bring up. I can have an idea that I am the self, whatever that means. I am the self. I'm consciousness. You mean I am fullness? I can even say that to myself.
Yeah.
It might even make me feel better. But that is having. It is not abiding in the knowing of what I am. It is having an idea about myself. So I've got the self, here's me, and now I'm putting onto that self a spiritual notion. Swami Dayananda never deals with that. What he would do, he would take you by the hand and you would be listening to him. And as you listen to him, he might be talking about particularly what God is. And and this is the beginning point of Vedanta, to discover the very fact that the very presence of the given, whatever that given is the presence of God. It's the presence of reality. Everything you're looking at is the presence of reality. The thing is that, you see, as human beings, we've got all of these notions about what we are. You know, like, I'm an idiot, or I'm great, or I'm no good, or I'm fantastic, or I'm better than other people, or I'm less than other people. We've got ideas about other people. They're idiots, they're good people, they're bad, they're basically good, whatever. We've got conceptions about that, haven't we? And we've got conceptions about the world. Well, yeah, the world is tough, the world is magnificent, or the world is unjust, or the world is just. These are all conceptions about the three basic things: myself, the world, and other people. Now, and what Swami Dayananda called, all of those are subjective notions. They're my notions I have about the world, and I take the world to be what my notions tell me they are. So my notions in my head are a way of seeing, aren't they?
Yeah.
If I think I'm a loser, I'm having a way of seeing, and I'm feeling myself to be a loser. If I think that you're a horrible, nasty person, an arrogant person, I'm seeing you in a certain way, and I'm feeling a certain way about you. I'm being in a certain way about you, aren't I?
Well, all of your thoughts will conform to that way of seeing it, so you won't think you've got a way of seeing like it's all very consistent.
No, that's right. The basis of my experience of myself, others in the world, are notions. I'm not aware of the notions. I'm only
you're experiencing
having the experience
that the world is as whatever you think it is. If you think it's a hateful world or a cruel world, you'll see the world that way, and your thoughts will conform to that.
Or if you think like a Pollyanna, that it's just a beautiful world, it's just so lovely, it's just all consciousness is evolving and everything's honky-dory. It's the same. So the basis of our experience is notions that have been built into us through experience. And then we take our experience to be true. Now, what Swami Dayananda talks about is that the whole what he meant by knowledge is becoming alive to facts, not having a notion about facts. You see, if I think that you're an idiot, that is not coming alive to facts. It's a mental conception I've got in my head that I project onto you, and then I'm experiencing you as that. And I'm not even aware that I've unconsciously projected a notion, am I?
So you don't think you're looking at an idiot, you're experiencing an idiot in that situation.
Yeah, I'm experiencing an idiot.
So you got no doubt about it.
Absolutely not.
But it's only notional, it's not.
Yes. The wonderful thing is that Swami Dayananda has revealed actually the philosophical problem of what is reality. He reveals, he actually helps you come alive to what reality is. So it sheds light on ontology, the ontological question, but it doesn't do it through philosophy. What about epistemology?
So ontology, could you explain it again? That's about being.
Just what is the nature of what we're looking at?
Nature of reality. What's the
nature of reality? Yeah. That was it. That's its subject matter.
Yeah.
Now it's not that. Because Vedanta actually resolves the problem of what is reality, you could say it's ontological, but it's not a philosophy. But it does resolve the problem of ontology. What about epistemology? To see what is. To see what is. So So when you're so even though it's not an epistemological theory, it resolves the question: what is? What about ethics? See, when you're looking at the subject of ethics, some people have an idea or a conception, don't they, that of how I should act and what type of person I should be.
Yeah.
Now, and you should obey all of these things. Now, but Swami Dayananda would say, well, when you come into a situation, you first of all don't harm. You bring the value that's needed to that situation, and you don't disturb. Now, that's a way of living. It's not an ethical theory, is it?
No.
But it resolves the problem of ethics. What is right in terms of behavior? What about psychology? He doesn't deal with psychology. Does that make sense? As a subject. But the way of seeing that Vedanta is, the vision that Vedanta is, resolves the psychological problem. So it has a bearing on the subject of psychology, but it's not psychology.
What do you mean by the psychological problem?
Just human suffering.
Yes. Good summary of psychology.
Sorry?
Good summary of the topic of psychology.
Yeah, well, there. So it deals with the topic of, it deals with the factors that psychology deals with, but it doesn't resolve it through psychology, through a psychological theory.
No.
What about theology? It doesn't. He never ever said, well, this is what God is. And
he doesn't say you need to believe what he is saying.
In fact, no, he didn't want that at all. He actually no, that's right. He was not giving over a belief for you to conform your mind to. He unfolded an understanding of God as a fact to be appreciated, and in that appreciation, you change as an individual. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
And the reason that I just wanted to interrupt this in our series. When we contrast what Vedanta is, it's a way of seeing, a way of seeing ourselves, a way of seeing other people, a way of seeing the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And a way of seeing it, and it's not a philosophy. That's why Western scholars, when Western scholars study Hinduism, because they do not understand the vision that it you see, Hinduism, the religion of Hinduism, is this vision that we're talking about, this life-transforming vision, in the form of a culture. Now, I don't know much about Hinduism, but I do know about the vision which it's based on. Do you see what I mean? Because that vision is embedded in the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, and it's a universal vision. It doesn't belong to Hinduism. Hinduism belongs to it. So this vision is a universal vision.
Yeah.
And it's applicable to everybody, every culture, at every time. And this is the extraordinary thing about Swami Dayananda was that, like what I said, he would unfold. He never unfolded a religious belief, but he did introduce you, and he helped you appreciate what the reality of God is, which is the presence of Ishwara, the presence of God, appreciated. That is the religious factor, isn't it?
That is the real meaning of religion.
That's what he says. It's the real meaning of religion, as
opposed to being a religious belief or a feeling good
religious
about
practice.
myself.
Yes.
It seems that there's a lot of, whether it's religious or secular life, there seems to be a lot of emphasis on feeling good about myself, as opposed to being happy because I'm being myself.
Yeah, I don't want to go into that yet, but what the point is that religious belief is religious belief, and we're not knocking religious belief, but religious belief does not transform you in the way that an understanding of what God is transforms you.
Because you're saying with this vision that you're talking about, there's a psychological transformation of how you're being in the world and how you see the world.
Yes, because you see, the way I see you, if I see you as a terrible, horrible person who's hurt me, that way of seeing becomes embodied in what we call the attitude of anger, doesn't it?
Yes.
So my way of seeing is my way of being. The problem is that we don't really see life as it is. What we do is we see life as we think about it. And so when we think about ourselves, we think of other people, we think of the world, we're enclosed in ways of seeing which determine our way of being. This is why Vedanta works. Because what Vedanta does is it transforms the way you see. So it's a means of knowledge. In other words, it's a way. So here you are. Here's Swami Dayananda. He has a way of seeing the world. Then you're listening to him, and he's unfolding this way of seeing. You know, he's looking at the world, and he's just talking to you, and you're listening.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself seeing as he sees. So he's using the words, the meanings from the scripture, which is because the vision of what we are, what the world is, and what God is in the Bhagavad Gita, for example. So he unfolds, using words, he unfolds the meanings that exist within the scripture, but not so you understand the meaning in the scripture. He unfolds the meaning so that you can see the meaning as it exists in your life.
Right now, right here, as I am.
Yes, if you were to say what Swami Dayananda does, instead of hermeneutics that deal with the meanings in scripture, but what his method is existential hermeneutics. He unfolds meanings that exist in our life so that we can clearly see them. And when we see the meanings the meaning that he's talking about, we change as an individual. It brings us into an entirely different relationship to ourselves, other people, and the world.
And it's not a theory or belief that he is asking you, it's a way of seeing, which you can become alive to.
Yeah, the vision of God, right? Which includes the vision of the world and how we see the world, how we see ourselves, how we see everything. Actually, do you mean? Is not dependent upon religious practice. It's not dependent upon religious belief. It's not dependent on philosophical theory. It's not a spiritual philosophy. It is a recognition of what reality is, and we can abide in that recognition while living. And when we do, we find ourselves transformed as an individual. We find ourselves no longer suffering from self-dissatisfaction or insecurity. That's the point.
Some things could be conducive to it, like a grateful or prayerful attitude.
That'll come out of that, actually.
More fully.
Yes. Again, we don't use attitudes to get somewhere.
No.
So the whole point is that everything starts from knowledge. In other words, once we actually see what he's talking about, then practice finds its right place. Because once I know that people and things don't hurt me, they're only instrumental, once I know that, I can then, in one sense, live that wisdom. But doing doesn't reach it.
No.
You first of all have to become clear on certain things, and then so that you become, in other words, once you really understand what's in front of you, which is wisdom, right? You can then live that wisdom. You do not it's not the other way around. There's lots of people who, they meditate all day and try and make their minds quiet and all that stuff. It's all very nice, but having a quiet mind is one thing. But if I'm actually here, right now as I am, and I'm alive to what's here, the sounds, I'm actually alive to facts. My mind is quiet. But I haven't made it quiet through a religious practice, have I?
No.
So the reason I just wanted to go through what we were talking about today is the fact that, to emphasize the fact that what we're looking at here, the whole purpose of Vedanta is the transformation of the human individual from being insecure and suffering from various forms of self-dissatisfaction, who's enclosed in psychological reactions where there's no freedom, to being free while living. So the whole, and this freedom does not depend upon religious belief, religious practice, spiritual ideas, science, everything that we know to be all the things we're used to.
What you're talking about is quite different from mindfulness as well, isn't it?
I don't want to go into that right now, but no, it's not a practice of being mindful. No. But all I want to point is that talking about a means of knowledge. So there is a way in which you can come to see what the world is, what people are, what I am. And in the very seeing of that, we are liberated from our travails. And this depends on knowledge. It doesn't depend upon, and it depends upon knowledge. And what Swami Dayananda means by knowledge is seeing what is. It doesn't mean information. The biggest thing, the biggest mistake that people can make about Vedanta is thinking that it's a theoretical structure.
I think it's a philosophy. It's not a philosophy.
One of the things that Swami Atmaprakashananda made very clear to me from the very beginning is it because he knew what I was like. She says what we're talking about here is a vision. We're not talking about a philosophy. And if we understand that that the whole purpose of Vedanta is to come to appreciate ourselves as free, to recognize ourselves as free, and to be able to abide in that appreciation while living. This is the whole purpose of Vedanta. Then we start to look at it in the right way and approach it in the right way. If we think that we're studying philosophy, or we're studying theology, or we're studying spirituality, or all of these subject matters that are conceptions, we're going to be severely misguided, and we will not be able to receive the fruits of the practice, the fruits of the knowledge. And we can always tell, to the degree that we are appreciating the fact of being free from insecurity and self-dissatisfaction, is to the degree we understand Vedanta.
So that's the validation. The reason why I can say you're distinguishing a theory, a vision from a theory, is that in a vision, the validation of that is that you change psychologically.
That you come to an appreciation of yourself, as in a way that you're not feeling good about yourself, you're not feeling bad about yourself, but you're being yourself, and you're content with being yourself. So that for Swami Dayananda, a wise man is not someone who knows about Vedanta. He says a wise man is someone who is happy in himself because of what he is, which has got nothing to do with philosophy, has it? Or religious beliefs?
No.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you, Bede.
We'll continue more on the series, but I just wanted to sort of, in one sense, position Swami Dayananda in the right light. He was not a philosopher. He was not propagating Hindu theology. He was not dealing with psychology. He was not, all of these subject matters that we understand. What he was unfolding a vision which acts as a light in which we can see clearly ourselves, other people, and the world. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.